this computer. Guys, what is the crack? Zooming from Derry, I've got Chris McLaughlin. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Dinny, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, man, thanks for agreeing to come on. You've been early to Bitcoin, so I think you've got some good experience, and you're going to be able to share some of your experience and knowledge with us. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. But before that, maybe give us a little bit about your backstory about leading into Bitcoin. Like, what's your background?
Yeah, but a history in Bitcoin, but I wouldn't say that I'm a veteran anyway. I wish I had been a few years earlier. But yeah, general, my background's in business with a preference for economics. Most of my employment's been in technology the last 15 years. So kind of naturally was going to, I would say, move towards Bitcoin eventually. I've had an interest in investing since 2017. Probably observed it for the first while, kind of following stocks, trying to understand how everything worked before I dipped my toe in it. It is kind of a bit daunting with your first investments. Obviously, hand over money to watch other people make decisions for it to go up and down. Yeah, so it's kind of more passive in the beginning. I did a lot of reading, whether I agreed with all these all-time great investors or not was different, but I wanted to learn from them. So like Warren Buffett, Benjamin Graham, a couple of good books from Benjamin Graham, Peter Lynch, more to get the fundamentals of investing, how human behavior is a big thing in that. Started small, started in index funds, picked a few stocks, wasn't great at it to be honest. Moved into real estate a few years later. So yeah, over a period of time, just got more and more involved in investing, understand why the price moves up and down, how to value companies, how to value investments. Then got more into the macroeconomics side of things and geopolitics and how everything intertwines. So kind of tried to take a long view on everything. Look at what the mistakes are for the average investor. Same where the average investor went wrong. My original goal was to beat the average investor, see if I could. I don't know, it was all geared towards passive investing. I think I had a benefit of having a few close friends that are into finance and economics as well. Had a long conversations with those people over many years. Used to walk in lunchtime with a very close friend, and all we talked about was finance and investing every single day. So yeah, my journey into Bitcoin would have started from having an interest in investing and finance from years before. I did hear about Bitcoin in about 2012 or so. Pretty much ignored it and wrote it off. Never looked too much into it. The close friend who I used to walk around at lunchtime talking about investing one day came into me and said, Chris, Bitcoin's where we need to be at. And that was at a stage in 2013 where Bitcoin was going up thousands of percent, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000% that year. And my initial instinct, based on all the education and all the research that I did, was you don't go near something like that. Like that's a scam. It's not to be trusted. And a year later, it had a crash, and I felt justified at that time that I made the right decision. And yeah, maybe I wish I hadn't thought like that at the time, but yeah, this is how you learn. So yeah, I dismissed it. Felt justified in it. Afterwards, kept investing in the traditional investment world. 2016 then started to diversify, started looking a bit more into Bitcoin, started doing a bit more research on it. Not really any conviction, but a small amount of my portfolio into Bitcoin, and watched it grow crazily throughout 2017 then, especially towards the end of 2017. And it is the price that draws you in, first of all. And I think a lot of people have to take that journey of like your natural instinct should be that you shouldn't trust Bitcoin. And anybody that does get it straight away, they're probably not being honest, unless you've had a history, a background in finance, economics, and gold as your kind of base case for why you invest, and you can see how it relates to gold investors quite a lot. So yeah, took me a few years to build up the conviction. 2017, I watched it drop off a cliff again, and then, but given what it's done a couple of times, it intrigues you a bit more. I think the second cycle is when people will start taking more of an interest. You know, you've been through the first one, you see it, you think that's what it does. You go through the second one, and you think, yeah, there's something to this. So did quite a lot of research on Bitcoin, started investing in it more in 2018, 2019. Coming up to 2020, we all know what happened. The COVID crash, the money printers came out. You could see how it was kind of an advertisement for Bitcoin at that stage, with all the goings on in the political world, finance world, central banking, and yeah, I think from there just conviction grew and grew and grew. But yeah, it's just funny how many people I've spoken to, or how many people you hear having those multiple touches of Bitcoin before they really dig into it, and I think that's going to continue into the future.
Deadly. Yeah, so it was a sort of like myself, it wasn't a single point. Well, I suppose for me it was, once I learned there was 21 million Bitcoin, that was something that I got, that was my sort of light bulb moment, I suppose, where I was like, okay, that's pretty damn scarce if everyone wants this thing. But then of course my understanding and conviction just grows over, a period of years and going through the market cycles. Would you be able to explain Bitcoin to me? I always get people to try and explain it, because everyone explains it slightly different because they understand it slightly differently. But maybe in your words, like, what the hell is this thing?
Yeah. And just back in your previous point too, on the 21 million, like, again, that was my initial thought, but you always go through these questions, and it's the right thing to do. And I think every Bitcoiner will say the same. Like, with 21 million, why couldn't you create another one? Create another Bitcoin. And then it's once you reach the stage of,
once you understand that you can't, and that it is actually finite, for me, again, yeah, that was the light bulb of, okay, well, if there's definitely only 21 million, this thing's interesting.
Yeah. And that's when you gain the real conviction, when you understand how Bitcoin was created, why it was created, and why there will only ever be 21 million, and nothing will compete with it over time. Plus its current network effect, that's where you gain the real conviction. Explain Bitcoin in my own words, very difficult question.
Best of luck.
The most difficult question, because it probably depends on who you're speaking to.
And it takes time, as you said, because we're going into so much things. You're going into macro, you're going into computer science, you're going into human incentives, you're going into, so it's, that's why I'm like, you don't have to spend 4 hours, but give us a couple of minutes there for you to try and break it down for a layman.
Yeah, it is complex, and there's a rabbit hole there that I'm still going down, everyone else is still going down, and it never ends. But again, my background is in technology. I'm in the automation space at the moment, working with software automation. So I suppose the best description I would have from my point of view, if I was explaining to someone, maybe a peer in work, it's a fully automated monetary system. It's a self-adjusting monetary system, if you understand the difficulty adjustments. It's a self-auditing monetary system, if you understand how the nodes work. And no one controls it, and that's if you understand the decentralized nature. So if you have a monetary system that's self-auditing, self-adjusting, and no one controls it, and it's based on scarcity that no one can change, like, that's something really powerful. The other thing is, once you really understand it, and you understand how Bitcoin functions today, you can be nearly certain that you'll know how it functions in 5 years' time, and 10 years' time, 20 years' time, to a certain degree. So you've kind of got that certainty around it. When I look at other types of investments, like if you take real estate, for example, you don't know how many houses there's going to be in a certain area. You don't know if 3D printing is going to scale up exponentially, which it likely is. And you can throw up houses, land's a scarcity, but you can build up the ways upwards in housing. Companies, you're relying on decisions from CEOs and employees, and there's a lot of variables in that as well. Bond market, you look at what's happening in the UK at the moment. So when I look at certainty over a number of years and understand Bitcoin and those previous definitions that I gave you, it gives me the certainty that this is a long-term play over many years, that I'm going to understand what I've bought, sleep well at night, and yeah, happy at making a decision to invest in something like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's a slightly different angle on what I've heard before. Tell me about the current market cycle that we're in. What do you think of this bear market? You've been through a few before. How are you finding it? Is it anything different?
Yeah, macro is obviously different in this case, but the behavior around Bitcoin and what it did the last bull market, the previous bull markets, I actually don't try and focus that much on short term. But you can see it's playing out very similar in ways, in terms of, the halving kicks everything off, not directly, but many months later. It does take some time for some information to flow through, and it's probably the same as how I got into Bitcoin. You can kind of hear it once, you hear it twice, and the third time, you do a bit more looking into it. The halving happens. There's a bit of a delay after that, and then people realize that this is the scarcity is going to make a difference. So yeah, the bull market, I would say huge upswing, huge followed by a huge downturn afterwards, compounded probably what's happening at the global macroeconomic level. But I don't see anything majorly different, and I'm actually happy enough with how it's played out so far. I do think that what's happening at the moment, again, what's happening in the UK and other countries, is a bit of an advertisement for Bitcoin and why it was created. It was born out of the last financial crisis. There could have been other financial crises. I'll not speculate on that at the moment. But I think it shows you the way it was created and the power behind it, and how flawed central banking is and control. So it'll come up, Bitcoin will come out of a price-wise, will come out of a bear market at some point. There could be a trigger point, there could be a catalyst for it, there might not. I don't tend to focus too much on that. Focus on the long term, 5-10 years out. Where's it going to be? It's a technology. It's going to take time to adopt. As you say, you get a lot of different explanations from different people, so there's a lot of education to go on there. I'm just not worried at all about the bear market. Probably a good time to buy. Not financial advice, obviously, but like looking back now, my regret from the last bear market at this time was obviously not having enough education to have that conviction to buy and hold it at the time. So yeah, you can go into the nitty gritty about bear markets and what's causing it and what will happen in the next CPI update and the next rate hikes across various different countries and governments. But to me, a lot of it's noise. Focus on the long term. News is always going to happen, good and bad. But when you understand Bitcoin to a certain degree and your convictions there, wait it out. It's going to play out in a certain manner.
Yeah, in terms of just how it performed, excuse me, since 2020, although it's crashed, but in terms of all assets, everything has crashed. If people had a look at their pensions, they wouldn't be as dismissive of Bitcoin because their pensions are so underwater right now. But Bitcoin can recover in a week what it might take their pension 5 years or a decade to recover in. But in terms of all the major assets, Bitcoin has been one of the highest performers. I just think maybe property has outperformed it since 2020. So in terms of general investing of everything we can put our money into, it hasn't done all that bad. And then in terms of, you and me both, we read all the famous investors' books and all their timeless principles. But something that rhymes in most of these books of any super successful investor is that they're more excited in the bear markets than they are in the bull markets, because the bear market is where you create all the wealth. And that's what I've been trying to communicate on my channel and my business, that this is where we make the magic happen. I know it looks all doom and gloom and you're seeing all doom and gloom, but literally this is the opportunity. This is how you create your future financial freedom. It's those who can make the correct decisions when everyone else is running. You're running into the burning building, I suppose, and everyone else is running out of it. Or Warren Buffett, I suppose, when there's blood on the streets is when you're buying, even if it's your own. And these are just, again, sort of timeless principles of investing that I just bring them into this digital asset space, and I think you have to abide by them and respect those timeless principles just as much as you would traditionally. But because these digital asset like Bitcoin moves so much faster, well, you're not having to wait a decade to see if you're right. You can literally find out if you're right in maybe worst case 2 years from now. So the plays are much shorter and the rewards are much bigger.
Yeah, yeah. And as I say, price draws people in. I think that long-term view again, if you like long-term looking forward, but if you look long-term back, you'll see that those trends happen, and 100% right. Bear markets, market downturns are the best time to invest. Best time to create new Bitcoin content as well, Dinny, and build your own business. So great work, obviously, you're doing here, and education is going to be key during this period as well. You always hear about people as well having ignoring you in the bear market, and then once the bull market starts, they come and start asking you questions again. But at least if you've done your part, I've done my part during this time. At least you'll be there for them to answer questions.
They'll know who to be ringing when they're trying to pile in to get 100. They have 100 grand looking for a Bitcoin. That's deadly. But one little question, maybe, just get your take on this. The proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of stake has all the political weight behind it, and proof of work has all the headwinds of VSG. Do you see that being a strong headwind, or how do you see that playing out? Like, obviously, we both understand the difference that proof of work is necessary for sound money. But it's obviously going to be a definite attack on Bitcoin. Do you see it as a legitimate threat on
it? Short term, possibly.
Sure, yeah.
But again, long term, I only see it playing out one way. Again, big fan of history and looking back at what's happened in previous, I know people have been over this as well, previous empires, and how they built up their empire through acquiring lots of power, lots of goods, getting carried away with it, make decisions, try and stay in power, and they end up devaluing their own worth, whether it's gold, another currency. And you can see it happening in the fiat world at the moment. In terms of proof of stake versus proof of work, it's an odd rabbit hole to go down. I feel that proof of stake is a replication of the current fiat system. And once you start understanding that, you'll know how it will end. Proof of work is more in relation to what gold was like. Gold's a monetary system has been around 5,000 years. Fiat systems, a monetary system, have been around 51, 52 years. It's still an experiment, really.
A failed experiment, I would call it.
Yeah, very, very much experimental. So if you understand that both of them are based on different monetary fundamentals, and one's got a proven track record over history, you know how this will play out. Like we're in a situation where wealth inequality is growing over time, and you can see it even more since 1971, when properly moved off the gold standard, and that's only going to continue. And if your investment is in proof of stake token or coin, whatever way you want to refer to it, unless you're one of the founders, you're probably not going to benefit off it over time. And then in terms of proof of work, ESG narrative, I think that's going to be a problem until I don't know when it's going to be resolved, but I think people will start understanding. Again, it's all about education. Understand it more and more, and realize that for me, Bitcoin proof of work will be a huge driver for renewable energy in the future. So the way you have to think about it is, in any business that you have, if you have, like, cost is a huge thing. Obviously, you want to make profits, you want to make revenue, but cost is a huge thing. And if you own, for example, a coffee business, you want to make sure that you get coffee beans from the most efficient source, low cost, best option, because that's going to improve your overall profit margins. Whether it's like timber as your input, your cost, you want to make sure that you're sourcing that from the right place. Bitcoin's the only commodity that I can see that you need to put in only electricity to get something out of it. So if you're on the mining operation and your cost, I know there's hardware cost there as well, but your main cost is going to be electricity. You're going to do your best to innovate around that and bring the lowest cost electricity to your business.
You're incentivized. So,
it's incentivized you to look for low cost electricity and energy. So yeah, you'll see this. I can only see the trajectory of that increasing over years. Again, in the short term, you might read a news story that somebody's opened a coal factory to mine Bitcoin, but in the long term, it's only going to drive towards cheaper renewable energy or stranded energy.
Isn't that one of the most beautiful things I think about Bitcoin? That it's just that's what it does. It just pools human incentives. That we all operate out of self-interest, and it just uses human incentives to create this crazy technology like that's so innovative. But it just works on, I think, human incentives.
Yeah, the incentives on it, like Satoshi's, years, centuries ahead of everyone else, and how this was brought about. I know there's 30, 40 years of research behind it as well in terms of other attempts, but yeah, the foresight Satoshi had was, yeah, it's unbelievable when you start digging into the depths of it. But yeah, I think the narrative over ESG is going to eventually flip on its head, and people start realizing that this is going to bring a lot of innovation around renewable energy. It's just a phase that you have to go through. Like, I'm sure once cars were first came along and they were on the road, people were questioning a lot, around that. There wasn't the right infrastructure there. It was kind of scary, at the beginning, these huge chunks of metal driving.
They lobbied, right, that when cars first came out, the horse and cart people obviously went to the politicians and said these things are dangerous. A fella had to walk in front of it with a flag waving it. But like, as I was only chatting because I was talking to a good few no-conners. I was at the Biz Expo yesterday, and they were coming up with it. Well, Bitcoin's crashed and everything. And I'd be chatting away to them. I'd be like, see this, like, Bitcoin is the wheel, okay? That's what it's like. Doesn't matter, and everyone's going around carrying stuff, and the wheel is not invented. Like, it doesn't matter who says you can't use the wheel. That thing eventually is going to take off. As a technology, you can't suppress it. And sometimes the wheel will be worth 20 grand, and then it might be worth 60 grand. But really, what is the value of the wheel to humanity? It's much more than 60 grand, I think. It's much more than 20 grand. It's pretty much infinite value is going from not having the wheel in humanity to having the wheel. And likewise, I think not having Bitcoin for humans to use as a digital store of value. And we're always using these shitty ass physical stores of value, which suffer from all the constraints of the physical world, Newtonian physics. And now we've digitized it, or as Saylor says, digital energy. Like that still just blows my mind, digital energy.
It's a technology component of it, really, that's going to drive it forward, in my view, anyway. Like, obviously, education is a big thing, and I've said it a few times already, and keep repeating that. But the technology component of it, it always takes time, especially if it's new. People don't get it at the beginning, and then the infrastructure has to be built around it too. Again, same like cars, same like the internet, various other versions of this where. Or examples of this where it starts off as something, it's in its most basic form. You integrate it into society over time, and it grows exponentially from there. As I say, car, internet, telephone systems. There's not always the end user at that stage. Like, there wasn't always a fuel station to fuel your car. Same as electric cars now, I suppose. Like, the infrastructure isn't there, but that it's going to be a huge part of society going forward, and people won't buy electric cars because of range anxiety that people get. Like, they won't drive far enough, and battery technology is going to be better. The infrastructure is going to be there. There's going to be more charging points over time. It's just a matter of time. Nothing gets built very quickly in that way. So To me, technology is a big part of it. It's only going to be a matter of time before the infrastructure keeps growing and people realize why they need it through education, and then it'll be built into applications, your mobile phone, your day-to-day life, eventually.
Yeah, humans only move towards technology. There's never been a point in history where we've done the opposite, like that sort of, and that's since before the wheel was invented. That's just our journey.
Yeah.
So we're destined to become machines.
Yeah, when you put it like that, that's maybe not so. But then again, if you go on to the questions around, are we already augmented with technology with the amount of time you spend on your phone? It's only going to extend from that going forward as well, and it mightn't be necessarily a bad thing. Technology's improved humanity hugely.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if I can get some robot arms and legs, because my joints are fairly worn out and sore all the time. We'll talk a little bit about your book. So you wrote the book on called Why Bitcoin. Can you tell us about it a little bit, please?
Yeah. So yeah, last year, like when you go down that rabbit hole, you've got a lot of thoughts in your head, and it's kind of it grips you over time, and there's times where you're spending quite a lot of your day thinking about it, and I just need to get a lot of my thoughts out on paper. I think there's two. That's one reason for writing it. The second is, again, what I've been talking about, education. Like education won't stop for Bitcoin for generations. I still think people get fundamentals. I think I'll still be learning. I still learn, constantly in Bitcoin, even after being on it for years. So yeah, the education piece was a big part of it. To get my thoughts out on paper. I don't actually sell the book for, I think it break even more or less. And the reason for that is to try and increase adoption for people. I really do think that it's going to change the world for the better. So when you have that kind of motivation, it's easy to write a book on it. The other thing was the angle that I tried to come at on the book was more of a layman's description of it. Probably, obviously, there's technical components to it, but everyone out there who's educating on Bitcoin at the minute, and if you listen to Michael Saylor, great guy explaining things, but I think he's talking to a certain audience, and sometimes he's talking to the big institutions, and you're referencing, when Google, eventually catch on and they dump 10 billion on this, it's going to change things. And it actually started off, which I really admired about Michael Saylor, was going around the podcasts and the YouTube channels of some of the smaller Bitcoin accounts, and spending hours with them talking through this, which was admirable. But again, I think he still talks in a certain way that like normal guy in the street sometimes just won't understand when he's talking about basis points, and it's like I've learned a lot from him as well still, and he's educated me a good bit, but it's not going to appeal to everyone. And then you've got other Bitcoin educators, like Greg Foss. A lot of time for Greg as well, and spend a lot of time watching his. And again, he's talking, about the bond markets, and he's talking in a certain way. And I think
he loses me when he goes into bond market business. That's like, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. I don't get it, but Greg's entertaining.
As I said,
off on one.
It's only math. I don't know what grade he puts it at, but I think he thinks everyone from 5th grade is a math genius. But yeah, look, people get what he's saying, and people won't. Robert Breedlove as well, great content creator as well, and great for the space. Again, he has his own style, but again, I think it's most of these guys came from a finance background, and they're talking in finance, or obviously CEOs of companies. And I'm not saying no one is, but talking to everyday person, but I felt there was still a gap there to address. So I wrote the book, and it's laid into 4 sections, and it does start off with, in my opinion, what you need to understand first of all is, I don't know, I'm not plagiarizing from Robert Breedlove, but you have to understand money first of all. Like what is money? How do we get to where we are today? And going through that whole journey of gold and empires that collected gold, how they devalued gold and fell, from power, thought they were invincible at stages. Then through the whole Bretton Woods and gold standard and moving to fiat and where we are today. And once you go through that journey, at the beginning, you understand it better. I'm probably influenced a bit by what's in the Bitcoin standard. Again, Bitcoin standard, I think even the audiobooks like 9-10 hours. It's a long read. It's brilliant. Like, it's very good, really well explained. I tried to do some of that work in a concise manner. Like, the book that I have is only 100 odd pages. It's not a huge book, and it's there for people to pick up. You could probably read it in 2 hours. An hour, maybe 2 hours. You could read it and you could learn quite a lot. So, like, it takes you through what is money, then why was Bitcoin created, the technology components of Bitcoin, because that's what makes it, to me, the genius invention and discovery that it is, how all the parts fit together. Then the adoption of Bitcoin then over time, how it's evolved and how I see it evolving over the next 5 to 10 years or so, and beyond. I do plan on writing a further book, probably more theoretical, on the future of Bitcoin and where I see it in the very, very long term. But I think this book is kind of a kickoff for people to understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin, again, understand the why behind it, and then there should be enough in that for anyone who's starting to ask more questions and do more research afterwards. I did leave a lot of it open as well to provoke people to think and ask more questions. And there are some open-ended questions in it. Like, what do you think happens if we continue to do this in the fiat world? And everybody who's been in this space long enough knows that reading a 2-hour book isn't long enough, but it's enough to get you started. My hope would be that people will go on and pick up other books, pick up other YouTube videos, listen to like your channel and other channels, and start educating themselves then from there. So yeah, that was like the 2 or 3 main reasons that I wrote it, to get my thoughts out on the page, and to start educating an audience that probably isn't covered by the big mass media influencers that are out there at the moment.
That's deadly, yeah. I'm really looking forward to reading it, and maybe we can get you on again and we can go through the book and I can quiz it. We'll go through some of those questions. Just as we're starting to finish up, I just wanted to ask you a little bit, because in the beginning of your story you were into some stocks and mainly index funds and property. Are you still diversified into those asset classes? And it's sort of just 2 questions in one. And within the crypto ecosystem, are you diversified, or are you only interested and focused on Bitcoin?
Oh, Danny, you went there. Well, first of all, I haven't sold my house, so I am diversified. I still own some stocks as well. Don't think I would ever be 100% Bitcoin, even though my conviction's extremely high. But that's only because you can't predict what's around the corner. My conviction in Bitcoin's pretty high. It's a huge chunk of my portfolio. And I'll probably continue in that way, still going forward. I don't plan on being extreme leverage in any way. Trying to be smart about it, and wouldn't advise anyone to go 100% in Bitcoin, although I know there's plenty of people out there, and if it works out how it would, they'll be sitting in their citadels for many years. My conviction is probably as strong as theirs, even if I suppose the whole put your money where your mouth is, but I still do have a background in a lot of education and finance and the history of investing that tells me enough to not go 100% in anything ever. But I do. I'm blown away by the conviction of some Bitcoiners. Yeah. So, and look, I do believe that it is going to work out the way it should, just a matter of time. In terms of the crypto question, yeah, in 2017, as I started investing and dabbling in Bitcoin, I did buy some altcoins as well. I rolled them up. They crashed as well, lost money on them. The more I educated myself around Bitcoin, and you do have to understand, I think, some altcoins, and I wouldn't say to anyone, look at Bitcoin only and don't look at altcoins, because the more you look at those, the more your conviction in Bitcoin raises, because you see the flaws, and you've already seen that even in the last cycle with some of the altcoins crashing to zero, sometimes because of human intervention or trying to over-engineer things. Like, Bitcoin's basic, and that's the beauty of it. But yeah, I didn't lose money that I would cry over at all in altcoins, but I could see, and I'm probably lucky that I didn't get into it at the top and threw all my money in there. I watched it, more observed, same way as I did with investing. I observed it for a while, watched it, didn't get too carried away, and yeah, once I educated myself to a certain level in Bitcoin, I understand that these, again, same thesis, 5-10 years out, I know where Bitcoin's going to be. I don't know how these other altcoins are going to be set up. I don't know, are they going to change code? Are they going to break something? Is it going to favor, certain people that run these protocols? I don't think there's enough eyes on certain protocols as well to understand the long term. Like, Bitcoin's been scrutinized over and over again. It gives you a level of trust, peer reviewing it over time. If something comes out next week, like, it probably just comes from my nature of what I said at the beginning. I observed investing for a while before I actually put my money in it, and I'm glad I did it with altcoins instead of just jumping in at it. So yeah, I diversify still, but in terms of digital assets, it's Bitcoin only for me.
Deadly, man. That's awesome. Is there anything else that we haven't mentioned that you would like to mention today?
No, just again on the long-term view, I think we're going to keep experiencing this. But again, like, if you're a long-term thinker, you should be looking long-term back as well, and you see the trends over time. We're going to keep experiencing this boom and bust at the moment. I have friends talking about who never talked about finance or economics before, starting to talk about inflation rates and interest rates. So it's become more topical. People see it as just something naturally that happens within the finance world, but you can see that it's going to become more extreme since the introduction of fiat currencies. I think the wealth gap is widening over time, and I think there's going to be more uncertainty in finance, the financial world, and people, like, everyday man and woman who are trying to save for the future. There's a lot of uncertainty there. So until money is not a centrally controlled asset, until it's completely decentralized, and I'm not a libertarian by any means. Like, I think obviously government is needed in certain ways. I just don't think that money should be one of those things that somebody should control. It's the ultimate power when you think about it, because again, it comes back to incentives. It's not a power that any entity should have. It should be completely decentralized. And once you understand that, again, you'll understand the way that the world needs to move forward over time, in order to give the world more certainty, less boom and bust, and just, you'll be generally more content understanding. Like, I can see the next halving already. I can see the one after. I can see the one after. Don't know what will happen in between those, but the certainty that Bitcoin gives you is what I base everything on.
Well, one of the things that I've noticed from working with our guys in the Retire Early Club is that it's like Bitcoin. It's like, whenever you're trying to get something, people focus on, like, my whole mantra in all my companies was always, and my life was progress, not perfection. That was I remember when I got this lesson, I'd broken my back, had a strap on, a big float around me, and I was walking in a hydrotherapy pool, and it was only a small pool, about 3 meters long. And I remember I'd done 4 lengths of it, and they took me out, and I was in agony. And a month later, I was doing 30 lengths. I remember being at home after, and I was still in agony. I was going, this isn't working. This back's never going to get better. Then I started thinking about it. I was like, hold on a minute. You're after doing 30 lengths and you're in pain. 30 days ago, you were doing 4 lengths and you were in the same pain. Look at the work. How much percentage increase is that? And that's when I started, my mind shifted. It was all about making progress. So rather than getting to your goal, you know, the dream of finances, I want to be retired. I want to have all this money in the bank and all this other material crap that you think is going to make you happy, but then when you get it, you realize it doesn't. What Bitcoin tends to do is, and what I've found the guys in Retire Early Club is, once they understand this technology and they understand, as you say, the predictability of it, it gives them hope. So rather than being like, fiat is hopeless. You know, if you're young today and you're looking at assets and you're trying to get on the property ladder, you're like, the fuck do I do with my wages every week? Put them in the bank? Like, we can see where that's going. They're just going down the toilet. But once people start to get and understand Bitcoin, like, oh yeah, I don't have to go all in on this thing, but I can start building some wealth in this predictable financial system. And because I've done a lot of work on it, my conviction has grown. And, you know, sort of where I'm at, I'm like, this is the fucking wheel. Everyone is going to use this thing. And 99% of the world doesn't get it yet. Like, how lucky am I to stumble across this thing? And there's some idiots going around saying 20 grand's a lot for a Bitcoin. You know what I mean? They're focusing on the price of something, not the value. And I done a talk at the Biz Expo yesterday.
Yeah.
And I pulled out a poo, right? And I says, I swear to God, pulled it out in front of a room full of business owners, and they're like, what the fuck's this, lad? I had it in my hand. It was a fake one, obviously. And it says, I'll sell you this for a penny, okay? So it's really cheap, but is it valuable? Okay? And I left that, I threw it on the ground. So think of that offer. Then I pulled out a 50 quid note and I held it in my hand. And it says, I'll sell you this for a tenner. It's 1,000 times more expensive than the poo. Okay? But is it more valuable? Yes, because it's 5 times more valuable than what I'm selling it for you. You know, so and that's one of the things when people are on about the price of Bitcoin, it's like, that's the least interesting thing at the moment. It's the technology that we should be getting our head around. And trying to figure out. And again, one of my friends who's a venture capitalist and is investing heavily into this space, this is like, price. Who gives a fuck about price? Who cares about price? Like, it's the technology. This is what we need to understand. And then you realize. But yeah, I suppose to sum it all up, Bitcoin's hope. It gives you hope for the future. It gives you optimism for the future, and all you have is your present moment. You know, rather than deferring your happiness to, well, if I get rich, I'll be happy then. It's like, fuck no, I feel great. I understand Bitcoin. I'm saving in the money that goes up in value. I can get on with my life and I feel good about it. Today, I'm happy. Progress, not perfection. That's always been my mindset anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a good outlook as well, Dinny. Yeah.
What I want to ask you before we finish up, so your very last question, Chris, please. Just for a bit of crack, not financial advice, neither of us, well, I'm not a financial advisor, you're not a financial advisor, but what do you think the price of Bitcoin is going to be in 2030? You could have a bullish and a bearish answer, just for a bit of crack.
I know it's a bit of crack, but I really don't, I don't answer price predictions, short term or long term. I know it's going to be a lot more valuable than a lot of other assets. I don't know a lot of variables, and I know it's for a bit of crack. You don't want a serious answer, but it's just too hard to even put a number on it. And one of the things I've learned over the bull market was, like, most people who gave a price prediction ended up being a fool. There's very few, like the likes of Lynn Alden and Michael Saylor, who actually stayed away from price predictions, and some of the people who I respected as well gave short-term price predictions, and ended up looking foolish. But look, based on adoption rates and trajectory, you wouldn't rule out seeing $1 million Bitcoin by 2030. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but looking at, like, everyone shows the internet and mobile phone adoption over time, you can't help but see the correlation to that. And then as adoption grows, prices obviously going to grow. And then factor in everything else, like $1 million Bitcoin is not out of the realms of possibility.
2030 is a long way away. It's a lot of education. It's a lot of understanding. It's a lot of adoption. It's a lot of companies building on it. It's a lot of applications and stuff we don't even know yet. So,
and it's all and there's a lot of news out there as well that doesn't make the headlines of these adoption happening, new businesses growing up, new companies adopting it in certain ways, new applications coming out, different layers on Bitcoin as well, and there's a lot of good engineering going on at the second layer and third layer of Bitcoin that you could spend all day talking as well about, and no one sees that, and that's the whole building over time. It'll increase adoption, and I can only see it going in one direction from here.
Deadly.
So
Well, that's awesome, man. Where can we find your book, Why Bitcoin?
It's on Amazon at the minute. I can't even remember the price of it again. It's very, I think it's low cost compared to other books, and the reason that is it's all about, to me, it's all about education, and my drive for education comes from that. I feel that Bitcoin is going to bring a better world overall. So yeah, it's on Amazon. If you search for it, Why Bitcoin, you should be able to find it. I haven't sold that many. I haven't done any self promotion. This is probably the first time I've talked about it in public, apart outside of my friends and family. So it sold some 100 odd copies. It's not going to be a bestseller across the world. Well, maybe not now. Maybe in a few years' time, in the next bull run, it will catch on. But look, it's there for people to buy. It's in hard copy, which I actually have a copy of it there for anybody that wants to look it up and find the copy. You'll see it by the cover. And it's also in ebook version. I have got a recording of it as well for an audiobook, which I just haven't put into production yet. I just need to get time to filter out some of the quality content and I'll release that as well. So yeah, happy with it, proud of it. Just haven't done a lot of self-promotion on it or promotion on the book. But I will get around to it at some stage. For now, it's an education piece. People hopefully pick it up for low cost and read it and take that journey from there and progress.
Fair play, man. Doing your part. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it. Well, I'll say thanks for today. Thanks for coming on, and it's been great to chat to you and get to know you. And hopefully, we'll probably try and get you back on again in the future. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, love to do it again. Thanks. Cheers, Danny.